When I was in seventh grade, life flipped upside down. My dad died in a military accident, and my mom decided we needed a fresh start. We moved from a small, quiet town to a big city. She eventually remarried a great guy, my stepdad, and they had my half-sister. They were happy, but I wasn't. I missed my dad, my old friends, and my old life. Starting at a new school in the middle of the year was rough. Everyone already had their cliques, and I didn't fit in. I spent most of my time at home eating junk food and playing video games. Over time, I got chubby and stopped caring about much of anything. There was this girl at school named Lindsay. She was everything I wasn't: pretty, confident, and popular. I had a huge crush on her, but didn't have the guts to talk to her. The only people I talked to were these two guys, Alan and Joey. We weren't really friends, but they let me hang around them during school, so I didn't have to eat lunch alone. One day, they were talking about girls they liked, so I told them about my crush on Lindsay but begged them not to tell her. I should have known better. Later that day, I got a note in math class. It was from Lindsay. My heart raced as I opened it, thinking maybe this was my chance. But when I read it, I froze. In big block letters, it said, "I don't like you, OP." The whole class giggled, and my face turned bright red. I asked to go to the nurse's office, just to escape the humiliation. That wasn't the worst of it. Over the next few days, I realized Alan and Joey had told Lindsay about my crush, and she turned it into a whole drama. Suddenly, I was the creepy stalker. Kids called me names, laughed at me on the bus, and avoided me at school. Even the principal called me in and told me to leave Lindsay alone, though I hadn't even talked to her once. It felt like my life was over and seventh grade had barely started. After that note and the stalker rumors, seventh grade was miserable. Alan and Joey stopped letting me sit with them, so I was back to being alone at lunch. Every time I passed by a group of kids, I heard whispers or snickers. People started calling me hillbilly and redneck, mocking me for being the new kid from a small town. By eighth grade, it wasn't any better. Lindsay was still the star of our grade, popular and surrounded by friends, while I was stuck with the same awful reputation. Alan and Joey weren't exactly in the cool crowd either, but I figured out what they were doing. I think both of them liked Lindsay too, and ratting me out was their way of trying to impress her. The worst part? Lindsay milked it. On Valentine's Day, I got one of those candygrams that the school sold. I was excited. Maybe someone liked me after all. But when I opened the note, it said, "Stop stalking me, freak." My stomach dropped, and I tossed the candy in the trash. I knew exactly who sent it. High school was a fresh start for most people, but not for me. Even though I hit a massive growth spurt and eventually grew to 6 feet 5 inches, the rumors followed me. Lindsay made sure of it. Every time I talked to a girl, I'd hear whispers about how I stalked Lindsay in middle school. Some girls even accused me of being creepy, especially when I turned them down. By my sophomore year, I decided to change. I started hitting the gym, lifting weights, and joining sports teams. Basketball, track, and swimming helped me find a group of friends. I was no longer the loner I used to be, but I was still awkward around girls. I didn't really date. I just kept my head down and focused on myself. Things started to shift in junior year. Joey came up to me one day and apologized for everything back in middle school. He said it was Alan who told Lindsay about my crush. Alan, apparently, wanted to get on Lindsay's good side and thought throwing me under the bus would do it. I appreciated Joey's honesty, and while we didn't become close friends, we were on decent terms after that. As for Alan, he stayed a loudmouth even after high school. I remember one day in class, he whispered something about me and started laughing. I wasn't the shy, awkward kid anymore. I called him out in front of everyone. "Yo, Alan, you got something to say? Say it to my face like a man. Or shut the hell up." The whole class laughed. Even the teacher didn't stop me. Alan turned bright red and never messed with me again. But Lindsay? She never let it go. She stayed in the top-tier group of popular kids in high school, even though she was more of a sidekick than a leader. By then, I'd stopped caring what she thought, but she still found ways to make my life harder. I'd hear from people that she was spreading rumors, calling me a stalker, or worse. One day, I found out someone had made a fake social media account using my name and photos. It was full of hateful posts and slurs. all designed to make me look bad. After some digging, I realized it was connected to Lindsay and her crew. I reported the account and got it taken down, but the damage had already been done. By the time I graduated, I was ready to move on. I went to college, worked hard, and eventually became a CPA. My stepdad helped me start a small accounting firm, which has grown into a successful business. I stayed in great shape, worked on my confidence, and built a life I was proud of. Years later, I thought I'd left it all behind, until Joey showed up at my office looking for a job. It was surreal seeing him again, but he'd grown up. We talked, and I decided to hire him. Over time, we became real friends. He even told me more about what happened back in middle school, confirming that Alan and Lindsay were behind everything. When our 10-year high school reunion came up, Joey asked if I was going. I wasn't interested. He showed me the invite, and there it was. Lindsay was on the planning committee. Out of curiosity, I looked her up on social media. She was unrecognizable, overweight, divorced, and stuck in a dead-end job. Her posts were full of complaints about her life and desperate bids for attention. I should have felt satisfied that life had already given me some closure. But part of me wanted her to know how much she'd hurt me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I wanted Lindsay to feel what I'd felt back in middle and high school: humiliation, rejection, and powerlessness. She'd taken so much from me, and even though life had already handed her some karma, I wasn't ready to let it go. When Joey showed me her email address on the reunion invite, I used it to find her dating profile online. Her privacy settings weren't great, so I had full access to her profile. She was still trying to act like she was living a glamorous life, talking about her art, her amazing career, and how she was ready for her dream man. It was pathetic. I decided to create a fake profile on a dating site using pictures of a random European male model I found online. Tall, handsome, successful-looking, the kind of guy Lindsay clearly thought she deserved. I made sure to craft a story that would hook her. A charming, wealthy executive living in another state, who just happened to be looking for someone real and special. It didn't take long for her to bite. Within minutes of messaging her, she replied. The flattery worked like a charm. I told her how beautiful and unique she was, and she ate it up. Over the next few days, we exchanged messages, and I played the part of the perfect guy. Lindsay never mentioned her kids. I gave her plenty of chances to bring them up, but she didn't. Instead, she told me how she hated kids and wanted a man who could make her his priority. She painted herself as this hard-working, independent woman, even though her job at the coffee shop and her failed attempts at selling beaded jewelry on Etsy told a different story. I pretended to fall for her. I sent her sweet messages, complimented her constantly, and talked about how excited I was to meet her. She bragged about me on her social media, calling me her dream guy and posting vague updates about how her life was finally turning around. It was almost too easy. Eventually, I told her I wanted to meet her in person. I suggested an expensive restaurant near my office, somewhere way out of her budget, but believable for a guy like me. I even mentioned I'd be driving a Maserati and staying at a nearby 5-star hotel. Lindsay couldn't say yes fast enough. The night of the date, I made sure everything was set. I arranged for a delivery driver to bring a small stuffed bear to the restaurant with a note inside. I stayed nearby in my car, parked where I could see the entrance but not be seen. I watched as Lindsay arrived, dressed up and clearly trying her hardest to impress. She gave her name to the host, who seated her at the table I'd reserved. She sat there, checking her phone, and probably bragging to her friends about the incredible date she was about to have. 20 minutes later, the delivery driver arrived. I saw him hand the bear to the host, who then brought it to Lindsay at the table. She looked confused at first, but opened the note. Her expression when she read it? Pure gold. Inside the note, I'd written the same words she sent me all those years ago. I don't like you, Lindsay. Her face went pale, then red. She looked around, probably hoping no one noticed her embarrassment. I saw her pick up her phone, likely to text me, or, rather, the fake version of me. I'd already left the area, but her texts started pouring in immediately. She sent message after message, asking what was going on, why I wasn't there, and if this was some kind of joke. I let her stew for a while before sending one last text. Stop stalking me, freak. Then I turned off the phone, broke it into pieces, and threw it in the trash. The next day, I couldn't resist checking her social media. She'd locked her accounts down, but not before I saw her ranting about being played and how she didn't deserve this. For someone who'd ruined my middle and high school years, it was the perfect taste of her own medicine. After that night, I felt lighter. For years, Lindsay had been this shadow in the back of my mind, representing everything awful about my middle and high school years. Seeing her humiliated, even for just one evening, gave me a sense of closure I hadn't realized I needed. The fallout was satisfying to watch from a distance. Lindsay's social media went quiet for a while, but before she locked her accounts, I caught enough updates to know she was reeling. Word must have spread among her friends about her dream guy and the disaster at the restaurant. A few weeks later, I followed up on one last loose end. During our fake conversations, Lindsay had complained about her job at the coffee shop, calling her boss names and admitting she stole pastries meant for disposal. I called the store anonymously, asking if she still worked there. She didn't. I could only assume her bad attitude finally caught up with her. As for me, I didn't feel guilty. Lindsay had spent years making my life miserable for no reason. She'd started rumors, spread lies, and painted me as a creep when I'd done nothing wrong. Sure, life had already dealt her a rough hand, but I wanted her to understand, even just for a moment, what it felt like to be humiliated and powerless. When I got home that night, my wife asked how my day went. I just smiled and said, it was a good day. She had no idea about the revenge I'd been plotting for weeks. Maybe one day, I'll tell her the full story. For now, I'm content to let it stay between me and Lindsay. In the end, I'm not proud of what I did, but I don't regret it either. Sometimes the past needs a little push to stay buried. Revenge might feel satisfying in the moment, but the best way to move forward is to focus on building your own success and happiness. If you've ever dealt with bullies or difficult people, remember, they only win if you let them. Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more stories like this one.